your name, your organization, and then what is one word that describes your team. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. I'm going to ask Aaliyah maybe to read out a couple of the one words that describe the team, but we can go ahead and introduce ourselves. My name is Molly Klein. I'm the Development and Program Associate with ACT for Alexandria. And I would say that one word that describes our team would be resilient. I mean, we use resilient in a lot of our work, but Brandy's favorite saying to describe our programs is that we're building the plane while we fly it. And so you really do have to be resilient in order for that to work. So I'm going to give Brandy and Aaliyah a chance to introduce themselves as well.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brandy, and I am the Chief Program Officer with ACT. And one word that I would use is awesome. We could actually call our team Team Awesome because everyone is incredible and so dedicated. So that's a lot of words. So I'm going to stop there, but just we're so glad that you're here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aaliyah Carr. I'm the program coordinator, and one word I would use to describe our team is fun. We do have a lot of fun, and so I'm very excited to see everyone this morning. And I do see a couple of words coming into the chat, and so we have mighty. I like that one. Our team's amazing. Someone else in the chat said passionate, inspired, versatile, supportive. These are some great words. Inquisitive, collaborative. This is fantastic. So these are some great words also to describe Spring to Action as well. So fantastic. I'll give it back to you, Molly.
Thank you, Aaliyah. So one thing, just to make sure that everybody knows, the first two trainings are now available on our website. So some of you may have had an opportunity to attend Spring to Action 101, which really covers the basics of getting your page up and what are just some of the features that Spring to Action has. It's a really, really good asset to have and to review, especially if you're a newer organization. But if you're a veteran and you've done Spring to Action, you know, all 12 years, then it's still good to brush up on it. And then 201, which is also available, goes into depth on the tools that you can use to make your giving day just that much better. And it has a wonderful panel of nonprofits that spoke. So really what this training is going to do is to answer that question that, like, regardless of the size of your team, how can you really utilize and mobilize everyone, all of your supporters, to make the most of the giving day? So we're going to go into depth about how to use the nonprofit toolkit, how to use the analytics tools that are now on your giving page, and then going into, you know, free agent fundraisers, ambassadors, volunteers, business support, some of the lesser known assets that I think really make a giving day just that much more powerful. And then we're going to conclude by having a Q&A session. So throughout the program, if you have a question for either I or any of our 4 panelists, which we'll introduce a little later, please feel free to put them in the chat. My team will collect them and then we'll go through them at the end. So with that, we wanted to dive into the idea of what's in your toolkit. So some of you may or may not know, but on our website, and this is available to everyone, we have what's called a nonprofit toolkit. And this is just kind of the hub of all the tools and information that you're going to need. And we have an FAQ session, but the nonprofit toolkit also kind of dives into all of those things that you would need. So in the getting ready section, it has that participant information. How do you actually give? How do you donate? How do you direct others to donate? And then it has recordings of our workshops and training. So that's that 101 and 201 that I mentioned previously. And then we have building your team. And that's where it dives into how do you use others to be free agent fundraisers. And then there's a communications timeline that gives you actually a calendar of recommended social media posts, emails to send out throughout the build up to the giving day so that you're ready when the time comes. And then also building board support. How do you get your board and mobilize them to be in support of your day, especially for those boards that are a little more hesitant to jump in? I know that some of us have that experience as well. And these are all tools that are in that nonprofit toolkit. And then you have spreading the word, which is all our social media tips and tricks, available graphics. There are ready-made social media posts for you. I know that some people, like I said, don't have the biggest team. And so this is really where you would go for those graphics and downloadables, really easy thing that you can just plug into your social media and make a big impact with minimal work that you have to do on your side. So these are just a couple examples of some of the things that are in your toolkit. So I wanted to show you that communications timeline. So depending on where you are, I think we're about, Brandy, about 4 weeks out, maybe. So there's a 4-week communication guide that you could use. These are some of the graphics, the social backgrounds, the social shares, the social media posts that you can use and just incorporate in your logo and your information. And then this last one that I wanted to show you is actually we have a step-by-step guide of how to register free agent fundraisers, because that's a big question that we get is how, what do we have to do on our side? What do they have to do on their side in order to be a free agent fundraiser? All of that, again, is in your nonprofit toolkit. So something really cool, a new feature that we have that I wanted to share with all of you is a big question that we always get is, where can I get the numbers for our impact, our giving day? How can we know, usually it's a big lift on the team's part, the organization's part to determine whether or not they actually, had more success in their giving day from year to year. So now we have an analytics tool that actually does that for you. So this is a new feature. You can log into your GiveGap page. On the left, it'll say giving days, as you see in the first image. You select your organization, it's giving day, and then you click the blue analytics button, which is right at the top there in the bottom picture. And so what does it actually give you? So in general, it gives you the amount fundraised, the number of donations and donors, the matches and challenges that you received and succeeded in obtaining, and then any donor advised donations from donor advised funds, excuse me. And so you have those overall numbers, but then the really cool thing, something that I really value as we do, our data collection and things like that, is it gives you year to year too. So if you can see on the bottom, you have the dollars raised online, the dollars raised offline, and then the total raised, and it will give you that from year to year. So if you've participated several years in the past, this is a really valuable tool because you can actually, give these numbers to donors afterwards, or just have it for your team and say, yeah, this is the impact we made year to year, and you can compare online and offline to see where your success was and kind of be able to use those analytics tools to measure your success and plan for the future. So I am super, super excited to introduce our panelists. We've got fantastic speakers that agreed to go ahead and speak to you all today about their experience at various parts of Spring to Action. And so I'll let them introduce themselves as we go through. But one of the questions, and usually something that we spend a lot of time on, is the monetary ways that people can support your organization. So that usually goes to donations, and donating time. And so something that we really wanted to focus on is, okay, if you can't financially support organizations you care about, how can your supporters still help you? And so that's kind of where we are with the ambassadors, the business funders, free agent fundraisers, and volunteers. These are all ways that you can really mobilize the support that you already have existing in your organization, even if they can't financially support you. So I wanted to just briefly go over our wonderful panelists. And so we have Laurie Flynn, who's with us, Amy Rutherford, Tommy Amal, who's with Capital Youth Empowerment Program, and then John Paramore with Casa Chirilagua. So we wanted to start with ambassadors. So what ambassadors are they're just key in spreading the word about Spring to Action and supporting the causes they care about. They're they can be supporters from a number of different areas in your organization. That includes board members, community members, community volunteers, parents, regular donors, and friends. And that's not all. You know, an ambassador can be any sort of supporter that wants to just promote your organization during Spring to Action. So I want to go ahead and introduce Laurie Flynn and invite her to speak for a couple moments about just introducing herself, sharing her experience as an ambassador, and maybe giving some of the reasons that she chooses to participate as an ambassador and select the causes that she does care about.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm Laurie Flynn, and the word that would describe me and that describes my support for ACT and Spring to Action is enthusiastic. I just really love that our community comes together once a year, and this outpouring of support is always so overwhelming and inspiring, really. And ambassadors, and you would be surprised how many people in your organization would like this role. Ambassadors share that enthusiasm. They care about what you're doing. They want to encourage others to be aware and supportive. And as an organizational person, they extend your reach. They give you more voice, more hands, more help. I found this working so well. It's about 4 or 5 years ago now, when I was engaged with the Alexandria Tutoring Consortium. And I found out that you can recruit ambassadors with just a cup of coffee. Literally, a friend and I, who were volunteer first grade reading tutors with the Book Buddies program, decided we really wanted to help the organization at Spring to Action. So we simply invited 6 or 7 of our friends who were also tutors to come have coffee and learn about Spring to Action. Now, people today, I think, know more about it and know more about ACT because the pandemic made everything so visible. But 4 or 5 years ago, some people thought it was just a fundraiser for ACT. They didn't quite get that it was really about ACT offering a fundraiser for the community. So we had Brandy come and share a little bit of background, what ACT is, what Spring to Action does, and sort of open people's eyes to how easy it would be to let the community know and let the community support the tutoring work. So then we had a follow-up session that was really a work session because people sometimes are a little bit shy about fundraising. They don't like to ask for money. They love the organization, but they've kind of never done it. They don't know what to say or what to do. So we started out by saying, how many people here have ever written an email? Well, that's really what we did. We helped our volunteers write an email, not to local people, but to people on their Christmas card list, people from somewhere else, but people who were close to them. We figured, as we all know, people give to people. And if you were my colleague for, the better part of a decade, and I tell you about something I'm passionate about, you may just think you'd like to help. So indeed, we helped our volunteers. Some of them found it easy to write an email about their tutoring experience. We told them to make it personal, write about your little book buddy, share a moment that was especially rewarding, talk about what it means to you. And again, we said, keep it to just as, a short email, and then just include how to give. Any amount of support was welcome. And, some folks kind of got over being so shy. They got it out there. And they were thrilled when indeed these folks who weren't seeing lots of competing emails from lots of good organizations in Alexandria. This was, I got people donating from Arizona, from Pennsylvania, from New York, and they didn't know anything about Book Buddies, but they knew something about how kids need a little help at the beginning of reading, and how some kids have had a more difficult early life than others. So, you know, it was easier than I thought it would be. It was very rewarding for the people who participated. It was a hands-on experience that people repeated year after year. And at the end of the day, it brought in some dollars that might not have come otherwise. So to summarize, you know, ambassadors, and you've got them, you just need to appoint them. Ambassadors have enthusiasm for the organization and the cause. Ambassadors can provide encouragement to others in the organization who might be a little bit more shy about asking for money or spreading the word. And ambassadors extend your reach. They're another pair of hands, another voice, another supporter out there in the community, not only Alexandria, but as we found out with Book Buddies, pretty much anywhere in the country. If you ask your friends to please help with something that's close to your heart, they usually will. So I encourage you, find somebody in your organization, on your board or among your longtime volunteers, and appoint them as your ambassador.
Thank you so much, Laurie. And so one of the things that makes Laurie such a fantastic ambassador year after year is that I've only had a few conversations with her, I guess, personally, but every time I do, we probably talk longer than we should. Because Laurie's such a personable person and speaker that it's so easy. And what she said is very true, is that ambassadors really extend your reach, and they don't have to be anyone, you know, any big leader. I think that another thing that she touched on is that the difference between a person not connected to Spring to Action and philanthropy and the organization itself is sometimes the ambassadors. Those are the bridges between those gaps. And so I encourage anyone that that has any questions to please put them in the chat, and we'll go ahead and give our speakers a chance to cover those in just a few minutes. And so another great aspect of Spring to Action is the business support that we really build around the Giving Day. And none of this would be possible without the businesses that have acted as fundraisers year after year. And they're just really instrumental when it comes to unifying businesses around philanthropy and supporting nonprofits in Alexandria. And so year after year, or actually, I think this is only the second year that we'll be having a competition between Del Rey and Old Town. And so that's something that always spices things up. And Amy, who will speak to you in just a few moments, is one of the heads of that competition. And it really is a competition. I got to witness that firsthand last year, and it was wonderful. So I'm so happy to introduce Amy Rutherford to you, who I would love to introduce herself, to talk about her experience, and then what causes her to, one, get involved year after year and drive that competition, but then also support the causes that she does.
Am I on?
There she is.
Okay. Good. I can't see myself. I just see Molly. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Rutherford. I own Red Barn Mercantile and Penny Post here in Old Town. And I will second Brandy's one word about ACT as awesome. This is a prime example. Spring to Action is a prime example of that. I'm also going to echo most of what Laurie said. What I love about Spring to Action in particular is the multiplying effect of it all. It is the huge one. It's absolutely wonderful, efficient way to fundraise for especially small nonprofits. But second of all, it's a way to get your cause out there in front of so many more people. Like Laurie just discussed with the ambassadors, you're reaching out to their networks. You're reaching out beyond your current list to grow your donors through your current donors list. I thought the Christmas card list was a perfect example. I will forever use that. But for a business perspective, you're using our mailing list. So you're using our newsletter, you're using our social media, you're using our new our in-store signage, whatever possible there is, because we want to tell people about your cause and those that are particularly important to us. Molly mentioned the competition that we're doing with Del Rey, but now West End Business Association has joined us, and so has Old Town North. I believe either Carlisle or Eisenhower is too. So we're getting our, putting our dukes up, and we're going to duke it out to see which business association can do a better job of supporting our community. One of the things that you can do is reach out to, the associations will be doing a lot of heavy lifting just in general, just sort of a generic ask to our business, the individual businesses will be doing it to support Spring to Action, to find your cause during Spring to Action, and to designate Old Town Business or a business within Old Town Business, because we want to beat Del Rey and WEBA and everybody else. But one of the things you can do is work directly with a business. Laurie brought up Alexandria Tutoring Consortium, and one of the ways they could do it is work with Hooray for Books or Old Town Books, and partner with them and have an event in the store, a kickoff event, maybe even be ahead of during the early giving days, but ahead of the Spring to Action Day, to rally their supporters. And maybe Hooray for Books can just provide the space, give a percentage of their sales that day to their donors. It's just find a business that aligns with your work and work directly with them. That's one way to do it. I see Arts on the Horizon is here. They could work with the AR Workshop, for instance, and their creative business. One of the things that we're doing is Red Barn and Penny Post is doing is giving prize money for anybody who designates our stores. So if you designate Red Barn or Penny Post, if your donors, if you're the organization, you ask your donors to designate Red Barn or Penny Post, when they give their gift, then we will be giving $1,000 to the organization that raises the most, that has the most Penny Post designations and the most Red Barn designations. And last year, again, ATC was masterful at this. They targeted one store and told all of their donors to designate Penny Post, and they came away with another $1,000 in their coffers. So some other businesses, as we are adding to the list, will be coming up with ideas such as that. So be on the lookout and watch the business fundraisers. But I think mostly I just end with the multiplying effect is tremendous. Use your ambassadors, use the businesses. And I know Tommy's going to talk about the free agent fundraisers, talk about a wonderful way to spur competition. I've been on both sides of Spring to Action and can tell you that those, listen carefully, because free agent fundraisers are fantastic, great way to build competition, a fun, friendly competition. So I think that's it for me. Good luck, everyone. I hope you kill it. I know you will.
Thank you so much, Amy. And Amy's been, like I said, the driver of not only business fundraisers, I think, but also the competition that goes on in Alexandria. And it really is, business support is key. And they've really done a tremendous job in being creative in the ways that they support Spring to Action and nonprofits year after year. And I know that Amy touched on some of the ways that businesses support Spring to Action, and some businesses also choose to donate a percentage of their business profit from that actual day to spring to action. So they have designated days where they, will use those profits to support. Sometimes they'll select actual causes that they want to support, and sometimes it will be just kind of fundraising in general for spring to action, or encouraging their employees to kind of adopt a cause. So there are various ways that businesses really support the work that Spring to Action does. And they get creative year after year. So things change and the ways they support change, but the just immense support that they offer does not. So Amy already introduced the free agent fundraisers for me, and she did a wonderful job. And I think free agent fundraisers are really a not well hidden gem for Spring to Action, as in, some organizations really take advantage of it. And you're going to hear from Tommy Amal with Capital Youth Empowerment Program in a second, and their organization has made wonderful use of it, as have various others. But some organizations don't use them at all. But I think that, I always say I wish everyone used free agent fundraisers, because it really can't hurt your organization. It can only help them, because a free agent fundraiser is really a supporter or a team that creates their own page as an extension of your Spring to Action page in order to support and fundraise for your team. So they can do that in a variety of ways. So I've seen, I think it varies from organization to organization. There have been some really creative ways to do it, but then again, you can also just have a bunch of supporters that connect their page to yours, and it doesn't have to be any set team or competition. It can just be any supporters. And anyone that wants to support your cause, but doesn't want to do it monetarily, but has networks and connections, this is a really great way to do it. So some other ways that I've seen it done are like schools will have competitions between grade levels or between clubs, and kind of make a competition of like, okay, the robotics team versus the drama team versus whatever, and then, or 8th grade versus 9th grade versus 10th grade competition or something of that nature. But then, sports teams have also used it as, okay, we'll have parents that support the team and maybe are on scholarship, and they will do some of the fundraising to support that scholarship and that organization. So this is a great opportunity for your fundraisers to spread the word through their social media networks. The link that they'll share to their page will automatically link to your organization. So you'll receive those donations to your page through the link that free agent fundraiser utilizes. And it's just a great opportunity to bring other supporters to your cause by sharing their story. And something we'll say time and time again is, whether you're an ambassador, a free agent fundraiser, or when we hear from John, a volunteer, sharing your story is time and time again one of the most powerful things that your supporters can do, because it creates that emotional connection to your cause. And that's what really drives people to donate. It's not always the social media ass, and it's not even the great, I think of like King Street Cats, who has adorable cat memes that they post in order to raise funds. Sometimes those pull at your heartstrings, but really what it is telling a story. So I've talked enough, but I am so excited to welcome Tommy Amal, who's, like I said, his organization has made such a beautiful use of free agent fundraisers over the years. So I would love for you, Tommy, to introduce yourself, to talk a little bit about your experience with free agent fundraisers, and then any tips and tricks you've learned over the years that you want to share with our nonprofits.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I wasn't expecting an answer, but Tommy Amal, I serve the Capital Youth Empowerment Program as Director of Development and Corporate Relations. I'm also a career coach for many of the folks that we serve in the community from DC to Fairfax. I'm also going to be joined by Dr. Reggie Morris, who is our Director of Workforce Development. I'm a career coach as well. But thank you so much, Molly, for the introduction to free agent fundraising. So what that allows me to do is just give some examples and kind of set the stage and talk about some tips on how we were able to be successful with this. So a little bit of context. So Spring to Action last year was the first project that we had for CYEP is I started at CYEP on March 15th. So starting at March 15th, we do some training, we learn what the organization is, we hear about what our job might look like, and then it's like, okay, you got to raise some money with Spring to Action. So we were very excited to be able to learn and share what we do in the community. Reggie and I, we became quick buddies in being able to get this out to the community. But we thought fast. So we had 5 full-time employees. 4 of us started in mid-March. So we had to get really creative and figure out how do we multiply our efforts? How do we multiply our reach? And how do we make sure that our volunteers and that the people in our network actually knew our story? Because CYAP had just changed into an entirely different organization, one that had 1 person grew into 5. So what we did is we started basically an information campaign where we made sure that our board members were fully educated on the path that we were going in. We made sure, Reggie made sure that on the communication side, that we were starting to clearly identify and outline, these are our services, this is our impact. And together, along with our co-founders, started to think about who are the people in our network, you know, the everyday folks, right? We see them all the time. Who are the folks that we haven't engaged in a while? Like, who are the people who maybe lapsed donors, maybe came to a program a few years ago? We reached out to those folks and are like, look, this is a new horizon for our organization. How do we all come together to communicate our impact and bring in some money, right? So my first piece of advice is to get creative. You never know which person in your network, even if they haven't been involved in the past few years, who might be like, you know what? Sure, I'll set up a profile and I'll send it out to some buddies and raise some money for you all, because it's a low lift. It's not a whole lot of work. So that was really successful for us. When we got over the initial fear of reaching out to people and asking them to basically fundraise for us. Second, make it competitive, but in a fun way, right? We don't want people boxing over it, but you'd be surprised what happens when people, you know, a lot of us, you know, haven't been on a leaderboard in a long time, right? Or ever, right? So when you got folks who are, you know, are messaging you at 7 in the morning, like, I look like I slipped down to 6. I think I might have some more money raised for you later on, right? Send in reminders like, hey, I want to congratulate Molly, who moved up to number 1 in the leaderboard. She brought in $200 yesterday. Other people will see that and it's like, you know what? I might send a group message out so I can, you know, I want that number 1 spot. So some of those things we were kind of thinking on the fly helped us to really engage really a network of folks that hadn't been engaged in a while. Next piece, set a goal that's attainable. Our goal was $500 for everyone because we knew that, you know, I got some feedback. Some folks don't like asking people for money, right? Some people are like, yo, if you give me the stuff to send out, I'll send it out, but I really don't want to be asking people. So we thought that $500 based off of our donor profiles and our previous gifts, we thought that was a pretty safe bet. We had some folks that came in at 4,000 and 5,000, right? They were overachievers. And as fundraisers, we love those people. So create a strategy to meet your goal. For us, our goal was only 15,000 last year. We set that goal because before we arrived as full-time folks, we hadn't done a whole lot of fundraising outside of programming. So we didn't know at this point. So we ended up blowing that goal out of the water because we talked to board members, we engaged board members. We're like, look, reach out to your buddies, you know, reach out to people who you do business with, who've got write-offs. I would say one thing that I saw as successful is government contracting companies. You know, $500 to those companies, piece of cake, right? That's not even a foursome at a golf event. So that's one piece of low hanging fruit that I think everybody can kind of eat off of. We targeted local companies. We targeted some of our high net worth individuals. And Reggie did a really good job of targeting folks that had social media kind of presence, because those were folks who maybe didn't raise money, but they got it in front of lots of folks. So yeah, social media was a big deal. And I'll pass it to Reggie to talk about how he made everything super easy for folks to engage. We can't hear you, Reggie.
What about now? Can you hear me now?
We got you.
Thank you, Tommy. I can't take any credit for making it easy. These kind folks from Act for Alexandria did that. The first section of this presentation today outlined the toolkit that's provided to all of the nonprofit partners. I literally went on there, pulled out the guide. Okay, we're 8 weeks away. What does it say I need to do? And I followed the list. In terms of activating or engaging our free agents, our partners, our board members, kept it simple. Literally, here's a graphic, here's a post, send it out. Here's another graphic, here's a post, send it out. And to use a term that I've heard, you have to be politely annoying. People may hear it one time and be all gung-ho about it, and then something else comes on their desk and spring to action slips to the wayside. And so that continual cadence of communication, of encouragement, of inspiration was helpful. I also took the personal approach of saying, I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do. And so led by example, to the point where I said, hey, here's my social media, here's my footprint. You can share it if you want. You don't even have to create something on your own. But that accessibility piece is important, especially if you're engaging folks that are maybe hesitant to go out and be a fundraiser, are hesitant on the technology side. We live in a social media world. I think all of us as nonprofit partners understand the bang for buck, and social media represents a big piece of that. So you just kind of have to dive in head first, but don't make it harder than it has to be. There are great resources on the ACT site. If you spend just a few moments reading them, and then get a team. As Tommy mentioned, I don't think that either one of us could have done this by ourselves, but together we were able to bounce ideas off each other, designate who was going to be responsible for what, and then take that and pass it on to our colleagues, our coworkers, our board members. And so we just have a unified strategy. The amount of anxiety that I have this year related to Spring to Action is nowhere near what it was last year, because I understand that there is a system and a playbook that we can follow.
Great. Thank you so much, Reggie and Tommy, for sharing. I love that term, politely annoying. That's how I feel a lot of times when I'm posting my things on social media and annoying all my friends and family leading up to Spring to Action. But hey, it works, right? So another thing that I used to be told when I took a fundraising class in college was, you're not asking for money, because asking for money is annoying and uncomfortable. You're inviting an investment, which I thought sounded like the most like business school thing ever. But hey, it does work. It is true. Because you're not asking for money from your friends and family. I mean, you are, but you're inviting them to partake in something that you really believe in and a cause that you're passionate about. And so that's kind of all that free agent fundraisers are about, is just inviting that. And I really love what Reggie said too about leading by example, inviting your friends to do something and letting them know that you're there with them doing it too. So I think inviting that conversation and that ability to ask questions and then receive support and make it as easy as possible for people to participate and support you. So that leads into volunteers. And so volunteers, I think, are such a big bucket, because it can, volunteers come from all different walks of life, but they really are an asset when you're mobilizing people for Spring to Action. And I know that a lot of our organizations here rely on volunteer efforts. Some of our organizations are entirely volunteer led. And so it's so important to be able to mobilize those volunteers and to give them easy ways to kind of find their niche when it comes to Spring to Action. And so a couple, I mean, these are all various ways that you can have volunteers support you. Several that we already talked about, like free agent fundraisers. And I forgot to mention, but these slides will all be available on the website afterwards. So I know I've been going a little quickly, but all these slides, this recording will all be available for you to be able to review and access on the site. But that being said, I wanted to kind of highlight a couple things about volunteers. So one of them is sharing your story. And I've said this time and time again, I'll say it again because it is important, is overwhelmingly the reason that people choose to give is because they hear someone else's story. And hearing the reason why your friends or families are involved and so caring about a cause is really going to be the thing that mobilizes donors to actually give. And then the other thing about volunteers, something that's really unique, is that they connect you with unique communities. You as an organization have a certain target population and audience that you will always reach with your social media. And that's your board members, your for us, our other nonprofits, your supporters and things like that. But your volunteers really make the difference in connecting with those communities that maybe you just can't reach. And that's huge. I think year after year, being able to fill in those gaps and to reach those communities that aren't always even invited to the table is really unique way for volunteers to elevate your organization during Spring to Action. And so I'm really excited to introduce our last speaker, John Paramore, who's the Development Director at Casa Chirilagua, to introduce himself, to share his experience about using volunteers. And I know that they also use a lot of young volunteers and mobilizing youth around the Giving Day. And then maybe something that you're interested in doing this year, John, for Spring to Action.
Thanks, Molly. Happy to be here. My name's John Paramore, and as Molly said, I'm the Development Director at Casa Chirilagua. We're a nonprofit that serves the Chirilagua community in Alexandria, which is a mostly Central American immigrant community. And I'm very excited to talk about volunteers. As Molly said, like a lot of us are volunteer based, and Casa is the same way. We have a smaller staff team, but we just have always had a very large dedicated group of volunteers. And if I were going to share my word for Spring to Action, I think it would be honest, like celebration. I feel like Spring to Action is such a joyful celebration. I know for a lot of us in development, it's a lot of work. And so sometimes that word is like, what? But really on the day of, it feels like such a celebration to bringing the community together and to just be able to see all the work that you've put in and to celebrate your organization and all the organizations across Alexandria. And the reason I'm zoning in on that word is because I feel like that's a very special moment for volunteers in particular. And so as we talk about volunteers, you know, I'm going to share a little bit about ways that we have engaged volunteers in the past, specifically on the day of, but just know that Spring to Action is actually an opportunity that I've heard about and seen that actually really helps volunteers move to that next level over time of supporting the organization financially. And so the long-term impact of Spring to Action is also something really important when you're thinking about volunteers. And so essentially, because Spring to Action Day is such a celebratory moment for Casa Chirilagua, we in the past have really focused on doing like in-house events on the day of, and that's most of those events haven't been actual like fundraiser events on the day of. The fundraiser is happening, you know, across emails, social media, reaching out, you know, our free agent fundraisers. But on the day of, we've had like a karaoke night that we invite all of our families to that we serve, but also alongside, we also invite all our volunteers. And that in two ways, both like for a lot of volunteers that join the organization, it just doesn't occur to them to also give financially, even though I think if they saw a vision for it, or if they partook in an event like this or asked directly, they would be willing to. And so I think in some ways, having like a celebration around Spring to Action fundraiser helps volunteers, one, to give themselves, but also it, as Molly, I think, mentioned at the beginning of this time, like a lot of volunteers give their time because they really care about the organization, but maybe, again, if they're like a younger volunteer and they don't feel like they have the financial means to like support in a big way, honestly, like we have our volunteers come and just share like Facebook Live moments from the community to their social media. They kind of use, we help them use the events to show what's happening at Casa on the day of, to build excitement across social media on the day of. I think when it comes to your social media campaigns, like do a lot of the prep work and the posts over the course of April, but also just like thinking about your campaign on the day of to like capitalize on the excitement that's happening is really important. And we often use volunteers to help us do that. We're a faith-based nonprofit. So we also have an open prayer room that we use. A lot of our volunteers are from our local churches. And so they can sign up for like a half-hour slot, and that we actually start that at midnight. We don't let them come into the community center at midnight. That's when we open. But they can sign up. We send out I'm blanking on the word, but we send out a link that they can just sign up for half-hour slots. And then that way, and then once we're open from like 9 a.m. until midnight that night, they can actually come into our community center. And we have like a room that's set aside for that. And then also we really encourage, I think a lot of us have chatted about this, the different speakers, but encouraging volunteers to get involved on social media is really key and really easy. Like a post isn't actually that hard to do. So what we've done in the past is we've provided a lot of different pictures to our volunteers that they can use from their specific programs that they volunteer in, but also we encourage them to just like, take pictures themselves while they're there. That's not usually something they're thinking about, but if they've been reading with one of our students and they just tell them about the fundraiser, ask if they can take a picture together. And then we just ask them to tell their story. Specifically, we've really emphasized stories in this call, and I think that can't be overstated how important it is to not just share generic stories or to like forward emails. I feel like anytime someone forwards a story, it loses impact every time it's forwarded, but if you tell your own story, that becomes that's the immediate connection that's happening. And so we in the past, we've done like different trainings for our volunteers kind of on how to tell their story and just like brief like half-hour times before they come in for their volunteer shift. We just ask them to come in a half-hour early and just essentially help them get the ball rolling on what are different stories and start thinking in that mindset. And then we just ask them to share them. And honestly, like one time, I used to be a volunteer here before I was development director. And I remember our executive director at the time just came up to me and asked me like 3 or 4 weeks before Spring to Action, like just pulled me aside and was like, what's something cool that happened today? And I just shared this really awesome story that I have with a student. And she was like, that's a great story. Would you be willing to share that on social media? And I was just like, oh, and I actually really appreciated that because I love Casa and that's why I show up as a volunteer and I want to be able to share things. But it was that interaction that helped me to understand that actually the specific stories that I have here are what Casa is looking for. And also I feel like our volunteers have been able to uniquely engage with our students during this time. And so one of the ways that they've been able to do that is through our free agent fundraisers. So we've used free agent fundraisers to create volunteer groups and like the competition aspect between different volunteer groups, between Kids Club, our mentors, our Teens Club, and then they set up their own competitions. And then this can also be something that, especially as some of our middle school and high school youth program participants can kind of get in on too, if the volunteers are kind of leading the charge. It can be something that they're talking about in program time, and so they can, you know, film videos together or take pictures together and try and raise those funds together. The other thing I'll say is that we in the past have really taken advantage of, specifically for us, it's been a lot of our church organizations, but this can be with any religious organization or business organization, is that we've actually asked a lot of our trusted partners and we've trained them on how to create free agent fundraisers. And so then churches will then go and once like the leadership of the church is trained on how to create a free agent fundraiser, it's not just that that church is a free agent fundraiser, but they create free agent fundraisers within their church. So they have multiple different small groups or multiple different, you know, the community team, the hospitality team are all creating their own free agent fundraisers. And we're not even needing to do all that because we've trained kind of the leadership of these different organizations to do that. I'm trying to see if there's any last things. Share. And yeah, the last thing I'll say is just as if sometimes in the past we've had themes according to it. I think last year it was invest in future leaders, something pretty generic enough that most of any of our volunteers can think of a story within their programs to do that. It's not such a specific theme that it doesn't apply to Casa de College or it doesn't apply to our middle school program. It's a theme that every volunteer can think, oh yeah, I show up because these students, these people we work with are future leaders. And then we just make that theme very clear to them so that they can share their stories.
Great, thank you so much, John. There are just a lot of great content, but I really like what you said, and I can't stress this enough. It's just the invitation to ask. Most volunteers are happy to do anything that you ask them to do. It's just the matter of being invited to do so. And then pictures. Like John said, it's just asking for a picture because we found that like on our social media, pictures are much more valuable than if they're with a post. If it's a post with pictures, then with just words or a generic graphic. I know I always forget to take pictures of things because I get caught up in the event, but for those who, you know, those nonprofits that we have worked with that have worked with us for years know that we're always asking for pictures so that we can highlight that work, and it's because it makes a difference. And then my last piece for volunteers is just, I would encourage you to share results with your volunteers. It's really easy to ask them to participate and to actually have them do a great job, but also sharing, you know, what impact, what success your day had, so that they can know that they were a part of that and they actually contributed to that ask, and these were the results. It encourages them to do that year after year. And so just a lot of really great content. And I wanted to give, I know we have a couple minutes left, being mindful of time. Do we have any questions for our speakers or for myself regarding Giving Day, their experiences, anything of that nature? I encourage you to either put it in the chat or go ahead and come off mute and ask your question. Or maybe our speakers just did such a great job the first time around that no one has any questions. Well, I'll give a couple minutes in case anyone wants to put a question in the chat. But just wrapping up, I wanted to share that if you have any questions, if you need any help when it comes to setting up your page, any questions about the training or anything, you can always send me an email at mollyklein@actforalexandria.org. One other resource to share with you is that we had a lot of talk about social media and storytelling and things like that. We actually did a training on that last year, which is also available on our website. It kind of walks through how do you set up a calendar, or if you don't have the bandwidth to do that with your team, how do you make the most out of the posts that you are able to do? Shameless plug, I did lead it, but I'm not just trying to drive up views for that video. It really, we had mostly other marketing specialists on it. So it wasn't me talking, it was people that actually knew what they were talking about. about how to grow your giving day. And it's just a fantastic resource. But if we don't have any questions, I just want to give our speakers a virtual round of applause for just their wonderful experience being here 9:30 on Wednesday morning, giving their wonderful experience and just sharing their passion for Spring to Action is really what makes a difference. And so thank you all for being here. Like I said, this recording and these slides will be up on the website. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out. But if there's nothing else, have a wonderful Wednesday and the rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.